Hello everyone, now we stand beneath a flickering fluorescent sign, the kind that hums like a fly trap and bathes everything in a sickly, yellow light. You can almost hear the static buzz, feel the weight of an incoming storm thick in the air. There's a gas station on the edge of town, halfway between nowhere and the place you forgot you were going. A battered old pickup truck pulls in slow, too slow, maybe, if you're the type looking for trouble. And tonight, someone is. Inside the truck is a man you wouldn't look at twice. Flannel shirt, weather-bitten hands, a wedding ring dulled by time. In the passenger seat, his wife, tiny, bird-boned, holding a receipt in one hand and a mint she hasn't unwrapped in the other. She doesn't like driving at night, especially in the rain. But this stop was her idea. It's always her idea to stretch, breathe, stay grounded. She believes in grounding, even when the earth is soaked and the wires above crackle like nerves on edge. You already feel it in your chest, don't you? That low thrum of something coming. This won't end in pleasantries and windshield wipes, so, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here, and drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where you're watching from. Now, relax, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's get into today's story. It began with a misunderstanding. A pump that wouldn't take a card. A moment of silence too long between the clerk's question and the veteran's answer. His wife was already walking inside when a patrol cruiser pulled into the lot. It was late, the air thick with thunderclouds, and one officer was twitchy. New on the job. Young. Barely 5 months into the badge and already jaded by back-to-back meth busts in the trailer parks nearby. The veteran's wife opened the door. She smiled. She pointed at the receipt. But her free hand moved just a little too fast. The officer stepped forward and shouted something. None of them would later agree on what it was. You're standing 10 feet away now, holding a coffee, watching as the woman flinches. She stumbles back. And then there's that sharp, unmistakable sound, the click-pop of a taser deploying. Her body jerks, crumples. The veteran's eyes don't blink. He drops the gas nozzle. The cup in your hand suddenly feels like it weighs 20 pounds. The young officer freezes, as if realizing what's just happened but not quite ready to admit it. The taser still dangles from its wire, sparking quietly near her shoe. She's breathing, but barely. And the man, her husband, the one with the truck and the scars and the steady hands, walks forward, slow and straight-backed, like someone who's been through too many doors and cleared too many rooms. 2 more squad cars arrive. Then a fourth. Radios crackle. Words like aggressive male and non-compliant subject float into the humid night air. He doesn't raise his voice. Doesn't raise his fists. Just kneels beside his wife and whispers something you can't hear. Then stands again and puts his hands behind his head, not out of submission, but calculation. The SWAT van arrives within minutes. Helmets, rifles, flashlights. They form a semicircle as if expecting a shootout. And still, he says nothing, not until the laser dots line his chest like a child's red Crayola constellation. That's when he speaks, 5 words, that's it, and the entire line of trained, armored men freezes. One officer even lowers his weapon. A silence creeps across the gas station. It feels unnatural, like time refusing to move forward. You don't hear the words. Not yet. But you will. Because those 5 words are going to be talked about in every police briefing and ethics training for the next 5 years. Those 5 words are going to stop lawsuits, start investigations, and rewrite a few dusty chapters in a forgotten government handbook. But for now, you're still at the edge of it, heart thudding like it wants to escape your ribs. The veteran doesn't move. The SWAT leader calls something into his mic. And then a man, older, graying, not in uniform, appears from the passenger seat of the 3rd Squad car. He walks up to the lead officer and whispers something in his ear, the guns lower. Not all at once, but in a slow, rippling motion, like dominoes being caught before they fall. And the veteran? He kneels again. Not because he has to. Because he wants to be closer to his wife. Her breathing is ragged. Her arm is twitching involuntarily. But her eyes. Her eyes are locked on his face. That's when you realize you haven't taken a sip of your coffee in 5 minutes, and then the first flash of lightning hits, splitting the night in two. You're about to find out exactly why everything stopped. The 5 words, when they finally reach your ears, are not shouted. They're not barked in military cadence, not uttered through clenched teeth. They come out like an instruction. Like something you're supposed to carry with you. I trained half of you, that's it. 5 words, carried over the rain-slick asphalt, louder than sirens and orders and the muttered curses of adrenaline-soaked officers trying to figure out how they went from a routine call to what felt like the opening scene of a courtroom drama. I trained half of you, not a threat. Not even a boast. Just a fact, and from the way the team reacts, how a few of them stiffen, others flick their eyes to their commander, you know it's true. This wasn't just any veteran. This was a man who didn't just serve, he taught. He molded. He wrote doctrine and watched it bleed into field manuals. A man whose combat lessons weren't just words in a classroom, but muscle memory for these men now standing in front of him, weapons slowly lowering. You watch one SWAT officer remove his helmet. His name tag reads, Carrillo. He's chewing the inside of his cheek, staring at the man as if seeing a ghost. Then he speaks, mostly to himself, Camp Pendleton. Room 4B. Another voice, was that Blackwater? No, dude. Fallujah. He was the convoy guy. The burn puller. And there it is again, burn puller. You'll hear that phrase more than once as this story unfolds. And each time, it'll weigh heavier. You start to realize you're not watching a gas station incident anymore. This is an intersection of time and memory, one of those rare moments where the past slams into the present with a force you can't ignore. The paramedics arrive and begin checking the veteran's wife. She's responsive now, eyes fluttering, lips moving as she tries to repeat what he whispered earlier. Her hand grips his shirt, still curled from the shock. The officers back away slowly, giving them room. The 5 words, when they finally reach your ears, are not shouted. They're not barked in military cadence, not uttered through clenched teeth. They come out like an instruction. Like something you're supposed to carry with you. I trained half of you, that's it. 5 words, carried over the rain-slick asphalt, louder than sirens and orders and the muttered curses of adrenaline-soaked officers trying to figure out how they went from a routine call to what felt like the opening scene of a courtroom drama. I trained half of you, not a threat. Not even a boast. Just a fact, and from the way the team reacts, how a few of them stiffen, others flick their eyes to their commander, you know it's true. This wasn't just any veteran. This was a man who didn't just serve, he taught. He molded. He wrote doctrine and watched it bleed into field manuals. A man whose combat lessons weren't just words in a classroom, but muscle memory for these men now standing in front of him, weapons slowly lowering. You watch one SWAT officer remove his helmet. His name tag reads, Carrillo. He's chewing the inside of his cheek, staring at the man as if seeing a ghost. Then he speaks, mostly to himself, Camp Pendleton. Room 4B. Another voice, was that Blackwater? No, dude. Fallujah. He was the convoy guy. The burn puller. And there it is again, burn puller. You'll hear that phrase more than once as this story unfolds. And each time, it'll weigh heavier. you start to realize you're not watching a gas station incident anymore. This is an intersection of time and memory, one of those rare moments where the past slams into the present with a force you can't ignore. The paramedics arrive and begin checking the veteran's wife. She's responsive now, eyes fluttering, lips moving as she tries to repeat what he whispered earlier. Her hand grips his shirt, still curled from the shock. The officers back away slowly, giving them room. Then, the man in plain clothes, he turns out to be a retired captain, nods once at the veteran. They don't embrace. They don't shake hands. They just share a look that belongs to people who've seen too much and know that most things don't need to be spoken out loud. You're thinking, who is this man? That's when you overhear the captain's voice behind you. Back in 2004, there was a convoy ambush. Real bad one, out near Ramadi. I saw the photos. He pulled 9 guys out of a burning vehicle. One by one. Full kit. 3rd-degree burns all over his arms, but he didn't stop. Would have kept going if there'd been anyone else left to save. The SWAT team goes quiet. You realize, some of them knew. Some didn't, but now they all do. The younger officer, the one who fired the taser, leans against the hood of his cruiser, pale and shaking. He looks like he wants to disappear. He mutters something that sounds like, "I didn't know." The captain doesn't yell. He just says, "You never know. That's why you ask. That's why you wait." It's a lesson delivered without malice, just gravity. You're still processing all this when one of the officers, older, seasoned, clearly someone with stripes in his past, walks over and does something unexpected. He kneels, right there, next to the veteran and his wife. Not in submission. Not in guilt, in respect, and like dominoes, a few others follow. This isn't a scene you'd believe if someone described it to you. A gas station parking lot. Flashing blue lights. A woman recovering on a stretcher. A kneeling circle of body armor and ballistic helmets around a man in a flannel shirt and boots that still smell like burnt Kevlar. You're witnessing a kind of silent apology. A moment where uniform doesn't mean hire, it means protector. And for once, everyone gets it. Later, in the back of the ambulance, the veteran finally allows the paramedic to wrap his arm. The burns are old, white and pink maps crisscrossed like rivers through canyons. He winces once, not from the pain, but from the sound of his wife coughing. He murmurs to her again. You don't hear the words, but you see the look on her face. She relaxes. She's going to be okay, and you? You stay rooted in place, unable to walk away just yet, because the older SWAT officer, he notices you watching. And he says something under his breath that chills you more than the rain. Every day, we forget who built the road we're standing on. Then he turns back to the man they almost handcuffed, the man who trained half of them, the burn puller. The rain has finally stopped, but the air is thick with the kind of silence that only follows a lesson learned the hard way. The veteran sits quietly on the edge of the ambulance bay, watching his wife sleep under the warmth of a silver emergency blanket. He doesn't look angry. He doesn't even look surprised. Just tired. The kind of tired you only earn by living through fire, literal and otherwise. You stay close, not to pry, but because something about the stillness feels sacred. And then, as if reading your curiosity, the old man speaks. Softly, like he's not talking to you so much as letting the words drift into the night. I wasn't even supposed to be in that convoy. You blink. He continues, I just rotated out. Had one last week before I could fly back home. But they were short a driver, and I figured, what's one more trip? His voice doesn't tremble, but you can hear the gravel in it, like every syllable's been carried in his chest for too long. We hit an IED about 9 minutes after leaving the outpost. The kind that lifts a 5-ton truck like a pebble. I don't remember the sound. Just the heat. Then the screaming. His hand rests gently on the metal edge of the stretcher. He's not giving a speech. He's remembering, there were 9 of them in the back. I couldn't see any of them at first, smoke so thick you'd think the world ended. I just knew they were there. I pulled the first guy out by his vest. He was still on fire. You flinch, he didn't make it. Then he shrugs, as if forgiveness for that isn't his to give. Or receive, but the second one. He did. So did the third. The fourth was missing a leg. Fifth one was shouting in Polish. No idea what he was saying. Didn't matter. They were mine. Every single one. You glance toward the SWAT van. Some of them are still here, still watching from a distance. Like they're waiting for an answer to a question they didn't know they needed to ask. The veteran notices, and for the first time, he smiles. One of your boys asked earlier if it was true. About the convoy. He chuckles, not from pride, but irony. You know what no one ever asks. What happened after? You lean forward just a bit. I spent 6 months in recovery. Skin grafts. Nerve therapy. And all I wanted was to get back in uniform. But they said no. Too damaged, they said. Too volatile. One shrink wrote, might be a liability. He pauses. Imagine that. You save lives, and suddenly. You're the danger. The silence grows heavier, so I disappeared. Not literally, but you know. Jobs here and there. VA appointments. Pills they said I needed. People stopped asking questions when I said, I'm a vet. Even fewer asked what I did. You think about the taser. The cuffs. The call that almost labeled him a threat before anyone asked his name. I guess I just got used to people looking past me. Unless I was in the way. And then his expression changes, hardens, just for a beat, until tonight. You follow his gaze to the gas station clerk, still behind the window, still shaken. She's the one who called 911, trying to help his wife when she collapsed from what was later diagnosed as a medication mix-up. But when the veteran rushed to help her, he accidentally knocked over a display and triggered the alarm. That's when everything spiraled. It wasn't her fault, he says quietly. She panicked. You can't blame people for reacting to chaos. But you can hold them accountable when they forget their humanity in the middle of it. He shifts slightly, revealing the faint outline of a service tattoo on his forearm, one faded by time, but unmistakable. That's what I told them. All I wanted was 5 seconds to hold my wife. That's when it clicks, those weren't just words of defiance. I trained half of you. It was a reminder, not of authority, but of a bond. One forged in fire. One the men in that SWAT van knew, some from his voice, others from his example, a bond they'd nearly broken. You sit beside him in silence. You don't ask what unit he was in. You don't ask for his medals. You just sit. And when the paramedic asks if he's ready to ride to the hospital with his wife, he nods once, but just before he steps inside, he turns to one of the younger officers, yes, the one who fired the taser, and offers a single sentence, don't forget who you are when it's loud. The kid nods. It's barely perceptible. But you can see it. He's different now. He won't forget, and neither will you. The veteran's words hang in the air like smoke from an old battlefield, slow to fade, impossible to ignore. You watch him ride off in the ambulance, seated beside his wife, who now rests more peacefully under the rhythmic hum of medical equipment. But the echoes of what just happened ripple outward like a dropped stone in a quiet lake. The SWAT team doesn't leave right away. They linger. No barked orders, no aggressive posturing now, just a group of men slowly realizing they nearly broke a bond they'd sworn to protect. You approach one of them, the same kid who fired the taser. He's younger than you'd guessed. 23, maybe 24, buzz cut too fresh to hide the shame in his eyes. His lips press into a line, and his voice is barely a whisper. I didn't know. I just saw movement and, you raise a hand gently. You were trained for chaos. But that doesn't mean you stop looking for truth. He nods, then stares at the street lamp like it might offer penance. That's when you hear a different sound, rumbling. Low and rhythmic at first, like thunder a few towns over. But it grows. Loud enough to make people step outside their houses. Loud enough to make a city street feel like it's vibrating. Engines. Dozens. Maybe more. From the corner of the block, a procession of motorcycles emerges, some sleek and black, others rough with dust and decals. They come 2 by 2. Headlights beaming through the night. No sirens. No roars of adrenaline. Just presence. Heavy, deliberate presence. The officer frowns. What the hell is this? And you smile, because you already know. Backup. Turns out, word got out. Maybe it was the medic who made a call. Maybe it was the clerk, trying to make things right. Or maybe, just maybe, there's a silent network out there, a veteran grapevine more reliable than any digital alert. Either way, someone told the local chapter of Rolling Thunder that a brother was mistreated, and when one of them is mistreated, they all show up. There are easily 60 bikes now. Each rider wearing patches that tell stories in symbols, some with unit numbers, others with cryptic slogans like never above you, never below you. These aren't just bikers. These are combat veterans. Tank commanders. Navy medics. Former snipers. Old MPs with knuckles like bricks. They don't rev their engines. They don't shout, they just park, line by line. Like a shield wall of exhaust and leather and history. One rider steps forward. His hair is snow white, but his posture screams drill instructor. He walks right up to the lead officer on the scene, ranked, but rattled, and extends a hand. We're here to make sure the old man gets home safe. You got a problem with that? The officer glances around, unsure if this is a protest or something worse. But he finds no aggression in the man's tone, only a challenge. One that reminds him this isn't just about tonight. This is about a lifetime of service being repaid in the only way men like this know how, with loyalty. It takes a few tense seconds, but then the officer, wisely, nods. No problem. Thanks for showing up. The old biker turns to the line of motorcycles and taps his chest. A silent signal, and then, unbelievably, they start moving again, this time, toward the hospital. It's not a rally. It's not a protest. It's an escort, a volunteer convoy, ensuring that the man who saved others under mortar fire doesn't feel abandoned on a stretcher under fluorescent lights. You follow, not out of curiosity, but reverence. The hospital is just a few miles away, but the route feels longer, lit now by the glow of headlights and the flickering realization that something deeper is happening. In the ER waiting area, the hospital staff stands frozen. They don't need an explanation. They've seen trauma come through those doors 1,000 times. But this? This is different. One nurse leans to another and whispers, I think we just became the safest building in the state. They're not wrong. The veteran is wheeled into a room, but he's not alone. 2 of the riders stand outside the door, arms crossed, silent as stone. They don't speak. They don't ask for anything. They just stand guard, like old knights who never retired. Eventually, a doctor comes out to update everyone. The veteran's wife will recover, dehydration mixed with a bad reaction to her blood pressure meds. She'll be fine. But she needs rest. So does he. Still, no one moves, until a nurse, maybe the bravest person in the building, asks, "Would any of you like coffee?" It breaks the tension. Chuckles ripple through the riders. A few nod. One asks if there's cream. A moment later, the break room is filled with leather jackets and paper cups. As stories begin to trickle like warm water over old wounds, you overhear one man recount a night in Kandahar. Another speaks softly of Fallujah. And just like that, a community forms. Not built on blood or battle this time, but on healing. One of the riders, a woman with an Army airborne patch on her jacket, looks over at you and says, "We don't show up for thanks. We show up because he would have shown up for us." And you believe her. By morning, the hospital staff is making extra coffee, the street outside is packed with bikes, and the veteran? He finally wakes up to see his wife beside him, smiling, but even more than that, he sees them, all of them, because someone finally reminded the world who he was. When the veteran finally sits up in that stiff hospital bed, eyes blinking against the fluorescent ceiling, his first words aren't about pain or confusion. They're quiet. Simple, "Is she okay?" The nurse beside him, exhausted but smiling, nods gently. "She's fine. She's resting." His eyes close for a moment. Relief folds his features like paper. But when he opens them again, he catches a flicker through the narrow window in his door, just a streak of leather and chrome. "What's that?" he asks. The nurse hesitates, unsure whether to explain the full extent of what's waiting outside. "So you step in, you've got company," you say softly. He frowns. "Company?" "About 500 bikers." You add with a wry smile. "Give or take." And you watch it hit him, not disbelief, not even confusion, but something deeper. A quiet dignity that returns to his spine like a memory resurfacing from somewhere far away. Not a single tear falls, but his eyes well up just enough to shimmer. "I didn't ask for that," he says. You shrug. "Didn't have to." Later that morning, once the doctors clear him to move, he insists on going outside. Not in a wheelchair. Not in scrubs. He changes, button-up shirt, slacks, and yes, those same old boots. Scuffed. Worn. Sacred. He walks slowly, leaning slightly on your arm, past curious nurses, past awestruck interns, until the automatic doors hiss open. And then the applause starts, not a cheer. Not a roar. Applause. Long, measured, respectful. Hundreds of riders stand on both sides of the hospital's driveway like a ceremonial gauntlet. Helmets tucked under arms. Patches gleaming in the sun. Their bikes parked in rows like sentinels. He doesn't speak. He just walks, and they part like water for him. Some salute. Others nod. A few call him brother. One whispers, "You saved me and never even met me." It's the kind of line you only hear once in a lifetime, and only if you've earned it. He makes it to the edge of the parking lot, where a white-haired man holds out something wrapped in an old flag, a folded leather jacket, black as ink and lined with stitched names. This belonged to Mike. Afghanistan, 2007. He always said if anything happened to him, the jacket should go to someone who still carries the mission. I think that's you. There's a hush, and then, just like that, the jacket is draped over his shoulders. He doesn't refuse. He doesn't cry. He just grips the leather like a prayer. As the crowd begins to disperse, the veteran and his wife sit on a bench outside. They don't say much. They don't need to, and you can't help but think back to the gas station, the chaos. The taser, the way the world turned so quickly. But here's the lesson: sometimes, it takes a storm to show the strength of your shelter. A rookie cop made a mistake. A woman collapsed. A man nearly died. But in that crucible, something unshakable was revealed. Honor doesn't come from medals, it comes from what you do when nobody's looking. It comes from how you treat strangers who are barely holding it together at pump number 6, and it comes back, sometimes louder than expected, in the form of 500 bikes filling a hospital parking lot with the sound of legacy. You realize this story doesn't end here, not really. Because the SWAT commander who nearly called in disaster now hosts weekly training on de-escalation with input from local veterans. Because the rookie cop. He's since apologized personally. And he even started shadowing PTSD support group meetings at the VFW, that gas station. It now offers free coffee to any veteran who walks in, and as for the clerk who called 911 too fast, she was the first one to deliver soup to the hospital room. That's the kind of redemption only real life can write. So, if there's one thing you take with you from all of this, let it be this: respect doesn't require a uniform. Courage isn't always loud. And the quietest 5 words, spoken at just the right moment, can sometimes stop a SWAT team in its tracks, because they weren't just any words, they were a key, a reminder, a door to a past filled with sacrifice, and a present still rooted in service. And in that moment, everyone remembered what they'd forgotten, that behind every quiet veteran in line for gas, in line at the DMV, or in line at life, there's a story. And some of those stories are still unfolding. So now, with the noise faded and the parking lot cleared, you let your breathing slow just a little. You imagine the veteran and his wife back at home, maybe sitting in the kitchen with a pot of coffee between them. She's flipping through photos, and he's watching her like she's the only lighthouse that's ever mattered. The boots he wore still by the door, the jacket hanging by the window, catching the late sun in all the right places. And though the world may spin on, busy and unaware, this moment lingers, not because it's big, but because it's real. You remember the lesson tucked inside it, that decency, when given freely, circles back in ways you could never plan. That strangers might just be family in disguise. That justice, when paired with grace, becomes something close to healing. And so, as you sit with that, maybe turn the volume down. Let the silence do some talking now. You made it to the end of the story. Thank you for that.